Hey everybody, welcome to Guitar Hunter. I'm Jeremy, I am the Guitar Hunter. I started this channel because I wanted to find the best guitars in the world, and I wanted to help fill the world with music and friendship. Now, one of the ways that I'm doing that is that I want to interview and talk to the world's best guitar builders. And if you care about high-end cool guitars, this person has been on your radar. So today I want to introduce you to Alistair from Emerald Guitars.
Well, I used to say that I was the guy that said yes to everything that everybody else said no to. Which kind of led me down a path of building some very unusual guitars. So I think there's a lot of people out there that will have seen my more unusual custom guitars that I made in the past. But I suppose what really defines me is that 27 years ago I made the decision that I wanted to build my guitars out of carbon fiber instead of wood. So really I'm a carbon fiber builder, designer, and like to do things a little bit different.
I don't know of any guitars that look like yours, just as far as the shapes and the colors and the vibrant, amazing carbon fiber. And yeah, so I've owned one of your guitars for about a month now, and I've played it a lot. I really, really enjoy it. And we'll talk more about that guitar here in a bit. But so as you've built guitars out of carbon fiber, what first convinced you that you even could use carbon fiber to build acoustic guitars?
I suppose it wasn't a case of whether I knew I could. It was more that I didn't know I couldn't. So I was fascinated by guitars growing up. It was just my lifelong passion. And I suppose I never was really good with wood. So whenever I first decided to build a guitar, I thought I'll use the materials that I knew best, and that was the composite world. So sometimes you come at these things just with what's comfortable. And for me, working with composites, I've been doing that since I was like 11 or 12 years old in my family business, and then working with carbon fiber subsequently. And it just seemed like it was a fit. I knew the strength and materials, the strength and parameters that the materials would give me.
Absolutely.
And I thought, well, why not? I was actually building Formula One racing boats at the time in St. Louis. And somehow I put two and two together and decided to build a guitar.
That's remarkable. Because I remember probably in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, you started hearing about cellos and other instruments being made of carbon fiber. And everyone felt at that point it was like, it's sacrilegious, and what's the, is it ever going to sound good? So, okay, so you knew you could because of your experiences in your life, but what was the tweak? Because guitar players are particularly traditional, at least in the US. If it's not made of red spruce and hide glue and dovetail joint neck, it's not a real guitar for some people. So what convinced you that you should actually what was your first home run, and what made you feel like, these guitars will work and I should make more guitars out of carbon fiber?
I think initially it wasn't really thinking about whether it was a commercial project. It was more a case that I'd made a guitar as a hobby and I just loved the process.
Wow. Okay.
I really fell in love with the art of building a guitar before I really thought I could make this a commercial success. And at that stage it was probably... Actually, I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and it's very much similar to the path of being a guitar player, being a musician. You pick up the guitar and then you get addicted to it, and it's like everything else just kind of falls into insignificance. So you become a musician, and you can't really kick that habit.
I love
so that. For me, it's like I became a guitar maker or a luthier, and that just was. I think after I made the second guitar, I knew that was what I was going to do the rest of my life, and then you have to work out how you're going to actually manage to keep on doing that. So
right.
I think for a lot of the time, the motivation was to sell guitars so that I could keep on making guitars.
Right.
It wasn't really to pay the bills. It was just so that I could keep on doing my passion.
Right. Yeah. If nothing else, for me, I try to have hobbies that don't cost me anything. Like, they don't have to make money. But, it's hard for me to talk my wife into, I'm going to do this hobby. I'm going to lose, I have a friend who plays golf, and he was telling me, he's like, I got my green fees down. I only spent $14,000 on green fees last year. It's like, that would never work for me. So, yeah, so guitars have, like you, man, I was just kind of ruined for all else. I remember I was 14 years old. I had a youth pastor who played a Martin, and I played it, and I'd played like my brother's classical guitar, but I'd never felt a guitar that like just shook my whole body. And it just made me like, I was like, this is it. This is the thing I care about. This is what I want to do. I want to be around as many guitars as I can. And yeah, man. Okay. Another question I wanted to ask you. Okay. So these carbon fiber guitars, like they are, they're pretty impervious, right? They're like the weather. That's the main feature you hear people mostly talk about. But do your guitars change over time, or are they pretty much what they are coming out of being made?
Yeah, well, that's one of the really nice things about it. It's you don't have to think about it maturing over age,
Right.
over years.
Right.
It's so. Like I have a really good friend who's a guitar maker, built some really beautiful handcrafted wooden guitars, and he said, well, the day he puts the strings on for the first time, that's the worst it's ever going to sound. And it's a different sort of thing with ours. It should sound exactly the same on day one, and after 20 years, really.
Right.
So it's it's a beautiful thing. So it actually really helps as well understanding your guitars, because
Absolutely.
If you're like having to think about what a guitar is going to sound like a few years down the line, then you never really get to enjoy the best of your guitars.
I have several guitars that are probably above $7,000 or $8,000 behind me, and within the first year of owning them, they got hard to play. I had to give them setups. I had to tweak them. I had to change them, and there is this like sinking feeling where you're like, like the setup was so good when it started, and will it come back to that? How many times am I gonna have to mess with it? So I understand, and I like the precision that this guitar comes with. So I want to talk about the guitar that, I'll come back to some more questions towards the end, but I want to talk about the guitar that I built. I basically was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And I got to build a guitar that I've jokingly called the Rougarou. Have you ever do you know what that phrase is? So the Rougarou. So I live in South Louisiana. So I'm from like Appalachia in the mountains, but my wife is from down south in Louisiana. And so the Rougarou is kind of like, it's like this big wolf thing, this wolf monster that lives out in the swamps. And so I wanted this like big, gregarious, jumbo-shaped guitar that looks like it came from the swamp. So I did an X30 with a 12-fret neck in teal. I did a pommel boss top, and then I did the vines, because I just wanted this thing to look and feel like it came from just like the swamps in Louisiana. And it is so beautiful. Like this guitar, and what I've noticed, I think, is a trait of carbon fiber guitars, and it's also probably because the sound hole is up closer to your face, but it is the experience of playing an acoustic guitar that sounds and feels like you're listening to a recorded acoustic guitar. And I mean that in like the highest praise. It has this warmth and compression and just really lush mids and round bass that comes straight at your face, in a way that other acoustic guitars, I think, that have a sound hole pointing away from you, it's just such a better user experience playing this guitar.
Yeah, well, you see, I remember, I don't play guitar very much anymore, which is one of the, I guess, the detriments of being a guitar maker. But when I was playing a lot when I was younger, I remember so many times sitting with my ear down over the front of the guitar with my ear towards the sound hole, so
right.
Yeah, so that's something that we all very often do, because you hear it different when you're leaning over the top and you're getting right close to the sound hole. You hear it different. So that was probably one of the initial motivations behind putting the sound hole off to the side, and it really is a different experience. But I think also the X30, like, it's my favorite sounding guitar out of everything we've made.
Interesting, yeah.
And I just love the fullness and the richness of it. But it's a guitar that I always tell people that you feel as much as you hear. You know, like the whole body resonates. It punches out when you hit that low E, and it just, you get this big booming, but it's still tight bass sound, which is great.
It's at no point does it lose its precision, or it never gets flubby. Like sometimes big jumbo guitars are so bass heavy that you get this woofy, warbly sound. So I've played it. I've played it at church several times. I've played it out with a couple friends. One of the things I do is like I have little kids, so like I'll walk around as my kids are playing. So it's like in the evening I'll just be walking around playing guitar, and it's amazing how well it stays in tune. It's amazing. It's beautifully eye catching. Like I've never owned a guitar anywhere like that. One of the things that I've noticed, because I opted to do the 12 fret and the slot headstock. I guess, are they all 12 frets?
All the X30s are standard.
Okay,
12
right.
fret to the body. Yeah.
So I just changed the headstock to the slot head, which I love. It's such a beautiful design. And then, okay, here's the thing. What are those tuners? Because they are the smoothest and most precise tuners that I've...
Yeah, they're Schertler tuners, made in Switzerland. So it is that Swiss precision,
Okay.
And they're absolutely beautiful.
They're really remarkable. And I love that stepped headstock where they're each... It's just such a beautiful thing. It feels like every detail on your guitars is thought through and executed really well. The bridge is remarkable, especially without bridge pins.
It's all those little details, and it's a lot of those things have kind of progressed over the years, but I just have a thing for detail and trying to be a little bit different. Like that headstock it's not the easiest way to build a headstock, but I think it's just beautiful. So we take a solid billet of carbon fiber. It's made up of about 50 different layers of carbon. So if you look on the side, you'll see this layering.
Right.
It almost looks like a wood grain. And then we machine it out. I used to hand carve them for years, and which was a nightmare job. And then thankfully I got some people who were smarter than me, and they were able to work out how to CNC machine it on our machines.
Right.
So, but it's a lot of work, and then we do a lot of hand finishing. But to get that shape and the way it's all stepped in, we can't really mold it like that. So it's a hard way to get to what I think is the best way.
I've gotten to travel the world. I got to go to FERC guitars in the Czech Republic, and I got to see how they're using lots of automation, lots of, they call them collaborative robots. Maybe that might be the brand specifically that they're using, but there's they are not afraid of using innovation and using the best technology. I think sometimes that's a big hang up, especially in the acoustic guitar world, where it's like, when they were building them in the golden era, they used hide glue, they used these traditional things. And I often feel like I love tradition. I own very traditional guitars, but I think more often than not, it's kind of a boat anchor, or it's just you're like choosing to limit your creativity.
For us, it's very much trying to marry both things together. Because
right.
What tradition does is it gives it that essence and gives it some uniqueness and puts a story into it. If you take away all that tradition and heritage out of all the building, then you're just making a box. Mm-hmm. So we love the idea of tradition. So for me, it's marrying tradition with the modern processes and
absolutely,
and always, but always remembering that the machine has to do certain things, but it's the person that uses that machine,
right?
That can really get the best out of it. So it's marrying those two things together. But yeah, we don't want to push tradition out of it, and in fact we try and bring tradition into mm-hmm. what we do in a lot of ways, even though we're using a very modern process.
Absolutely. I think if someone just heard your guitar, like it does not sound, and I mean this as a compliment, they don't sound like a totally different thing. They sound like a very familiar, very heartwarming, nostalgic kind of guitar. Like, I mean, just how articulate and warm this X30 is. Yeah, if you close your eyes, you would assume it's probably a wood guitar or something.
Yeah, and that's really how it should be. You don't want to have a guitar that, starts to sound like something different because you bought
right.
a guitar because you wanted to sound like a guitar. But in the same way, from a Taylor to Martin is going to sound different, and mm-hmm. And from one wood selection within a brand
right.
to another wood selection within a brand can sound very different. So, like, there is no such thing as how a wood guitar sounds and how a carbon fiber guitar sounds. That carbon guitar sounds a specific way because of the shape and the materials that we put in it. The same way on a wood guitar, it's the shape and the materials and how they're all put together.
Right.
So there's so many different ways that you can create a sound, but it still has to sound like something that's musical to your ears.
Absolutely.
And you know what's really good? Being in tune is a really great thing, because you can have nice tune, nice tone, but if it's not in tune, it's not going to sound great.
It is.
So that's what our guitars do well.
I was talking to a young guitar player yesterday, and he was saying like, "Hey, I need to buy this better guitar that stays in tune better." And I was like, "Do you have a pedal tuner?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, "This is easy, man. Just buy a pedal tuner. That way you will be in tune when you're heard, and it will also help you mute." I mean, people think you're a better guitar player if you're just in tune when you need to be in tune.
So let me ask you, what was your first experience with the ergonomics, the shape of the guitar?
Right.
Because that's something that you really have to experience and feel rather than see.
That's a great question, man. It's very different. I found myself like kind of hunched over, like I was like kind of hugging it. Like I found myself, because it's curved for my arm, and then where my chest there's that relief, like the upper belly cut. And so I found myself just leaning forward, and then I found myself with my ear right over the sound hole. I mean, it's a thing that you just kind of surround as you're playing it. And because I was surprised at how deep the X30 is. A very deep guitar. It's like 5 inches, 5.5 inches.
Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than a J200.
Yeah.
So like it's a big jumbo.
I know, but then when you compare it, like with the scale length isn't longer, but with the 12 fret, like it doesn't feel like, sometimes with the jumbo, I feel like I'm playing in a mariachi band. Like I just feel like I'm so spread out, and it doesn't feel natural. But yeah, so the ergonomics of the guitar are really remarkable. The neck profile is very familiar. There are other carbon fiber guitars I've played that they have very slim necks. And so with this, I like that they're still a fairly substantial, like usually if you're getting a 12 fret neck, you're a more traditional, bigger kind of neck or a V profile. And so this is just very familiar. I've not had any issues. I almost wish I would have gone even more absurd in my color choices. Like yesterday I was like, man, I kind of want a pink one.
Well, that could be the next one.
Okay, yeah. Tell me more about the Amicus for somebody that doesn't know what that is.
Well, what we always talk about with the Amicus is that it's the mandolin for the guitar player. So it's, if you can imagine putting a capo in the 10th fret, that's the tuning that you're at.
Oh,
so
I didn't realize.
It's tuned D to D, so you're tuned up to D, and it's a 12 string with unison pairs rather than octaves like a regular 12 string.
Right.
So it gives you that kind of choppy, rhythmic, high-pitched sound, and it's quite a high-tension instrument because you're tuned up to D, and because of the scale length we've chosen. It's a really tight, high tension. But so it gives you that mandolin kind of tonal range, but at the same time with a lot more depth and complexity to the overall sound. It's got a lot of bottom end and bass and fullness, and yeah, it's really, really nice.
I've played mandolin for maybe 13 years now, and it took me years to stop being a guitar player thinking in mandolin, because it's just different enough that it breaks your gait. And so with this, lowering that wall to get into that tonality, I think is such a clever instrument. And I don't know of another instrument like that.
There are a couple of things, both ancient and modern, that are in that same kind of vein. So it's, I'm not to say that I'm the inventor of it or entirely unique to me, but it's something that we've really pushed and added as a very strong part of our repertoire. But it's a beautiful guitar for a recording session. You know, if you're just adding a little bit of extra layer and depth to a track, it's great. Fits in well with some of our traditional Celtic music over here. I can see it fitting well into bluegrass if you can get those very, very traditional mindsets to embrace anything other than a mandolin. But yeah, it's got a lot of great places that it fits.
Okay, as you think about your legacy and you think about the guitars that you've built, what are some of the changes, and how have you had to refine your designs through the years? Like, how different is an Emerald from when you started to now?
Yeah, well, I've got it just off the side of my desk here is the very first guitar that I ever made, which was an exact replica of the Hohner acoustic guitar that I took a mold of. So I just started off with a traditional design, center sound hole, traditional dreadnought shape, and because that was just the benchmark to start from.
Right.
And I think quite a few of the early guitars that I made were all center sound hole, and it was very much using traditional shapes and designs, but trying to do it out of a modern and new material. And then I realized that because I'm using a different material, I could really do my own thing.
Right.
And once I started to embrace that and design guitars to match the materials rather than to match the what had gone before, that's when I really started to excel and make strides forward. Because a guitar is the shape that it is to lend itself to making it out of wood. The way that the sides are shaped and everything.
Right.
That's parameters that are based around the materials that they're using to build it. So there was no reason to do it that way out of carbon, other than just that's the way it had been done before. So that's when I started to experiment with offset sound holes and different shapes and ergonomics, and that just that really transformed it. So I think as I became more confident in the materials and myself as a designer, that allowed me to make big steps forward. Then I suppose the next big step was when I started to go from having everything done by hand and just molded, and started to bring in some computer design and more, well, not so much computer design, but more computer manufacturing, CNC manufacturing. So that allowed us to go in a whole new way, and now really we're starting to change even more in that direction, because all the designs that we currently make are all designed around how I was able to make them. And now with the team that we currently have, we're reevaluating and redesigning things based around the capabilities of our overall team. It's because you do certain things whenever it's you plus a couple of guys, but when you've got a team of 30 plus people, there's a lot more skill than just me, thankfully. So that's given us a lot of freedom. So that's the next big thing. It's designing guitars with our current technology and capacity and brain power.
Yeah, and because as you think, and it seems like you have done very well to create a culture within Emerald Guitars that understands the vision, the passion, the desire for the kinds of instruments that you want to put out into the world. And as I've traveled, I mean, Peter Firk has done a great job. Robin Boucher has done an amazing job in Canada. And you see that's the real secret sauce is building a team, because you often see that with some of these guitar brands, they just stay alone, like a lone wolf forever. And the guitar prices get unobtainium for normal people. And then it just becomes this like folklore of like the elf in the tree, there's secret knowledge from one guy. But just knowing that the best guitars are still out there and you can bring people into it and make better instruments with more people involved.
Yeah, so I think a few years ago I had to go from being a builder to being a teacher.
Right.
It became more and more frustrating that I didn't have enough time to build as many guitars that I wanted, or to be as involved as I wanted to. So I realized, and I used to always say, if only I could clone myself. And then I realized, well, no, actually what I need to do is teach people, and you're not really cloning them, but you're cloning your knowledge.
Absolutely.
And your ethos and your design concepts. But then getting all the benefits of those other people with a whole lot of other new skills. So it's, we've got a good team.
Headed towards the end of our conversation, I do want to talk about when guitars get sent to me. Sometimes brands don't want me to say anything negative, and I totally understand that. But it also needs to be a valid observation of guitar. So not that I'm going to do that right now, but when you receive, so when over the years of talking to customers and what they love about your guitars and what they would tweak, what is the most valid critique that you can remember of your guitars through the years?
That's a very good question. I don't think that I can think of just any specific thing.
Right.
Because I've had so many critiques. I've had, there's been a lot of things. But what I'll say actually in context of that, I started off as a guitar player. That's what
Right.
started my interest into guitars. But the more I was never a really great guitar player at any point.
Me
But
either.
the more I started to get into building guitars, the more, the less that I spent actually playing.
Right.
But not being a proficient player has actually, I think, benefited me because I depend a lot on other people.
Absolutely.
And other people's opinions and other people's critique. And so I've always tried to find critique. I've always tried to find people that didn't like something about my guitar.
Right.
And, some that do as well. And balance that out. So it's talking to a lot of people and trying to find the balance.
Right.
I know, sometimes you can make a really bad guitar if you just try and average everything out and just go, I'm going to, make something that suits the masses. But it's very much been listening to other people and then using my gut instinct then as a directing force.
Absolutely.
So I always welcome people coming and giving me some positive feedback. It's like, you go onto TripAdvisor and you see all the 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
I hate the 5-star reviews. The truth is somewhere in the sort of
Right.
3.5 to 4-star reviews,
Right.
Because you want somebody who's gonna, really think about it and
Right.
and find some things to tell you. So yeah, if somebody tells me the guitar is flawless, I'm kind of like wanting to interrupt them and tell you, well, I can tell you about this,
Right.
this, and this, and this. No guitar's flawless.
Right.
Every guitar has issues, and there's no such thing as the best guitar. It's just getting the right guitar and the right player for the right music.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, it's I always like good feedback from people.
That's great. And I mean, that reminds me of all of the stuff you hear about Leo Fender through his process. Because, I mean, he was not a guitar player. He was a radio technician and then turned into, a guitar builder. And for him, it was constantly getting feedback from players along the way. So, I mean, that's a tried and true strategy of trusting people. It also seems like you don't assign, moral judgment or weight to whether someone likes something or doesn't like something. I think sometimes people get too precious about their guitars, because, you'll meet people that are like, they just don't know about guitars. Like, okay, fine. But yeah, anyway, I think you're really, really onto something. I am over the moon with my X30. And like I said, it's not perfect, but it is for what it is and what I was concerned. My concerns have pretty much all been alleviated of carbon fiber guitars. Because I think for me, coming from growing up in the Shenandoah Valley, loving Martin and traditional guitars and bluegrassy guitars, and just coming from that, like I worked for, my first job was in a vintage guitar shop. And my boss used to say, the last great guitar was built in 1968, and we've just been reissuing them ever since. And I love that. Years ago, I heard Jeff Huss from Huss and Dalton in Virginia. I heard him say, the best guitars have to be in front of us, or else what are we doing here? And I love that the best guitars are still out in front of us.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I love so much about our approach is we hear so often that people say they play our guitars more because they're just confident with them.
Right.
They're confident to keep the guitar sitting out beside their favorite chair. They don't have to put it away in a humidified case or a humidified room, and they just play more as a result. And that's really what it's all about for me. I love traditional wooden instruments. I love the tradition and heritage by it. But at the end of the day, we want people just to play music and play the guitars. So if it's sitting there and it's in tune, there's a very famous musician that has a couple of my guitars, and he said he plays his Emerald more than any other guitar because when he comes back from tour, he picks it up and it's the one guitar in the room that he knows is going to be in tune. Yeah. So yeah.
I think that it's a remarkable instrument. I've played mine, countless hours. I've already run through 3 sets of strings on it, because it's just, I play it all the time and I love it. So I think you've done really, really great work as you cast out where you're headed. Because it seems like with the team you have, with your social media strategy, growth is on the horizon for you. where are you tacking towards? What do you want these guitars to look like and sound like in 10 to 20 years?
Well, we're certainly on a growth curve at the moment. We've just finished building a new factory here, and the factory has been built with the capacity of about 4 times of what we're currently building. So, that's the indicator of where we plan to take this.
Right.
We have a lot of room for growth. In terms of where I want them to go, as guitars, like right now, I think the range that we have, the model range, I love. Models like the X20 and X30, I can't really see how I can better them that much. So I think they're going to become like our heritage brand or our heritage models, and we'll tweak little things, but essentially they're going to stay the same. But I think really what I want to do is just reach a wider audience with what we do. And, there's still surprisingly some people out there that haven't heard about us or haven't really experienced this.
Right.
A big part of that is because we don't sell through stores, we only sell direct.
Okay.
So that's a limiting factor, so we're a little bit slower in permeating out there. But we have a great ambassador network, which are Emerald owners who are willing to show people in the locality their Emerald guitars, and that's a really great thing. So we're making great strides, but we're doing it in a way that we're trying to really stay true to what we're all about. And
absolutely.
I think what you said at the moment about or at the start about you're all about making music and making friendship, I think was
fill the world with music and friendship.
Music and friendship. I think that sits really close to what we're all about. We very much are the company that likes to be close with our customers.
Absolutely.
We build friendship and connection with people, and we can do that so much better when we do it direct. Even though we're doing it online,
right?
But we connect with people, and we love that part of it. We're not just making guitars,
right?
Our ethos here, the slogan that we use all the time here, is to make and inspire music. So that's the essence of what we're all about.
Absolutely.
It's about making music and not just making guitars.
Right, man. Yeah, we are of one heart on that. I love that, and I know that it is very true that people do business with people, and so I think that's where sometimes when you get to, there is a price point at guitars in which people are they just want to put it in the cart, ship it. They don't want anyone to call them or talk about it. But for guitars like yours, I mean, these are special, lifelong instruments that are coming into people's lives. So
yeah. And that's what our whole business model is about,
right.
with the 3D builder. So we built that guitar for you. You designed it, and then we built it for you.
I love it.
So that was your design.
I also love that I got some tweaks where I was like, hey, I asked for some clarifying questions, and I got really helpful feedback. Because at first, like, some of the colors didn't quite look like. I was like, I know that it will match, but I want to make sure it will match. And then there was another, because I wanted a vibrant teal, and I wanted a teal top, and there was the veneer that I picked, I forget what it was, but someone sent me an email back saying, hey, this color combo isn't going to be great, so either do a different color or a different veneer. And I love getting that advice, because somebody being unhappy that'd be a rough experience for both sides of it. Yeah, and you guys have done such good work. So thanks for taking the time to talk about your guitars. Thanks for making these guitars. And let me know, how can people find you? How can people check out guitars that you're building?
Well, I think the best thing is just to go to our website. It's the center of everything that we do. What I always recommend people to do when they go to our website is just go straight to the 3D builder. You go in there and you get to twist and turn and try all the different things, and that's where you'll really see all the shapes and the details of our guitar. Other than that, YouTube, Facebook, all those places, you'll find everything you need to know about what we do.
Absolutely. Perfect. Well, I'll put all the links in the description. So thanks for watching this video. I'm Jeremy. This is Guitar Hunter. This has been Alistair with Emerald Guitars. I hope you learned. Tell us in the comments below, what guitar would you build? What questions do you have about these guitars? What hang-ups do you feel with carbon fiber? Tell us what you think and what you feel, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.